Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming along tonight. My name is Tom Rutland. I'm the Member of Parliament here in Shoreham for East Worthing and Shoreham. Tonight, I'm particularly excited because it's mainly a listening event for me. We've got a fantastic panel of speakers. Just before I introduce them, I've got to do safety. So there's no fire alarm expected. If it sounds, the fire exits are at the back of the hall, and please congregate in the car park. Another little bit of admin, the event is being filmed, as you can see there. The audience are not covered by the camera, but if you ask a question, then your question will be picked up, of course. So if you do have any concerns about the filming, please just look out for Lauren. Where's Lauren, is she? There, or Naomi, right there in the corner at the end, and we can sort that out. And of course, please put your phones off or on silent, which is very appropriate for today's event. But we've got a fantastic panel tonight. Thank you to Shoreham Academy for hosting us and to the parents who've organised this event, who've come and spoken to me at my surgeries about it and indeed raised it on the doorstep when I've knocked their doors. I'm really glad that this is happening. I think it's a really important conversation, one that's been growing across the country and in our community. We've got a great series of speakers tonight. We've got Mandy, who's going to be the main host for this evening and speak first from the Naked Truth Project. We've got GP, Ellie Mason. We've got, from the Sussex Police, we've got Luke and Syntac. And then we've also got David, head teacher at Fulham Boys. And then Olivia, who's a local parent of 2 children. And after we've heard from everybody, we'll move to a question-answer panel where we'll all be sat along here. So without any further ado, please can I introduce to you Mandy.
Well, good evening, everyone. Can I open with a little quick confession? After listening to the news a few days ago, which was one of those moments, I said, Alexa, is this generation totally hopeless? And, of course, Alexa replied with the truth. As we all know, the truth is spoken by Alexa. And this is what Alexa said. No, this generation is not inherently hopeless. While some statistics highlight concerning trends in mental health among young people, there's also significant evidence of optimism, resilience, and a desire for positive change. And I have a little slide somewhere, but I just realised I don't have a clicker. Shall I run over here and click? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Will you click for me? Thank you, Tom. Because I think those 3 words encapsulate something of this evening. There we go. Yeah. Is that a clicker there? How about that? Thank you. Okay. Here we go, that's me. There we go. Optimism, resilience, and a desire for positive change. And I think that's probably why we're all here this evening. This evening, we do have an excellent panel, I have to say. We're going to share a whole load of stats and stories, and some of them are quite concerning trends. But we are also going to show, just by you guys all being here, that this is true. There is a real desire and appetite for change and something optimistic in the air, although sometimes when we hear the news, it doesn't feel like that. So a really very warm welcome from you to you from me again. We're in the room, by the way. We've got teachers, we've got school leaders, we've got scout group leaders, we've got government leaders, we've got a whole range of people. We've got parents in the room who are also, we are leading, aren't we, in our own families. So there's a whole bunch of us. And this evening has been put together by an amazing team of people. So Naomi's given us a little wave already down here. And then we've got Lauren and Amelia somewhere around as well. And they are also aided by a huge number of people. These things don't sort of happen by themselves, do they? So what an event we're going to have. And thank you so much for inviting me to chair this evening. This is actually the 4th event that we've been involved in, but they are happening around the country. Just the 4th one in Sussex, first in West Sussex. The first one was just in January this year in Hove, and then there was a second one in May in Patcham, and then a third one in Ringmer, and then a 4th one in Shoreham, and there's been in Burgess Hill, and momentum is growing for sure. Things really, really are changing. And this is literally sort of hot off the press. These are stats of today. And if you have a look at these things, you can see that the Smartphone Free Childhood event organisation is really gathering momentum among children, maybe some of your children, their friends, signing a pledge, signing up, and also a number of parents who are thinking, oh, finally, we've got something we can do together. We've got a collective response to something we've felt an uneasiness about for a while, but we weren't sure what to do. And now Smartphone Free Childhood have really shown this is an excellent way, it's a simple way of making a really profound change. And have a look at these stats. I mean, they really are quite impressive. Lots and lots of schools, 254 schools covered in West Sussex. And that really is, there's representation of lots and lots of people. So if you're still wavering this evening, if you're not really quite sure what you're signing up to or what the pact would be, we're going to tell you a little bit more this evening. And probably by the end, we hope you'll have plenty of reasons to really be thinking carefully about whether your children really do well with a smartphone younger than 13. We're bucking the trends here on the South Coast, folks. We really, really are. Do you know, just in the last couple of weeks, I've heard of 2 primary schools where there's already been a noticeable change, even within one family, where the older child had a phone a little bit earlier, but the parents are thinking, do you know, from the things I've read, the things I'm understanding now, I think maybe we're just going to hang on a little bit longer. Sure, there's a little bit of backlash from a child who's seen the older sibling have a phone, but actually it's changing already. There's a year group shift. People are thinking, well, maybe if the year 6s aren't having phones, maybe the year 5s might hold back as well. You know, it's trickling down, and that's a really, really positive thing. We aren't sitting around anymore scratching our heads wondering what on earth we're going to do about it. We've got some answers, so that's good. In case you wonder who the heck I am actually a languages teacher by training, and I also work for the Naked Truth Project as a schools associate. So that means that as well as revealing the hidden truths of intoxicating pleasure of French grammar, of which there are many, I also teach about the damaging impacts of pornography. More about that later. But unapologetically, my primary role is as a mother, a parent of 3 teenage girls. Yeah, I know. I'm here, not at home. But at the outset, we should say 2 things. Firstly, we are not anti-tech. I could not have got here without my sat-nav. I wasn't born with a direction gene. I don't know how to get anywhere. I'm grateful for the sea. At least I know not to drive into it. But other than that, I need my tech to get around. There are so many things that the online world does brilliantly, and we are, I'm sure, many of us very grateful for it. And the second thing to say is that we don't always agree with each other. Oh, to be in a room with people who don't think the same as us. It's a really good thing. It's a really excellent thing. Phones and screen usage can be emotive, can't they? Even amongst us and among our own friends. So it's not just for our children. We can feel very quickly judged or alienated or feel guilty that we've made a decision that was different to our friends, and that can make us feel a little bit uneasy. This evening is not for that. This is a conversation where hopefully we have space for listening, for gentleness with ourselves and with each other. We don't need to be defensive, but we do want to give space to evolve in our decision-making as new information comes to light. And I think this evening you will hear perhaps some new information, and as I've alluded to, some of it's quite disturbing. But we don't want anybody to feel guilty or ashamed, for example, if you've given your children a phone before they were 13, like I did. But we just want to be mindful of some of the things that are changing in this rapidly evolving digital landscape, and be aware of some of these nasty things out there, because it is a real and urgent priority, isn't it, that we think about the young minds and lives before us. Tom mentioned that it's being recorded this evening. That means it's a centrally recorded thing, so we'd be super grateful, please, if there were no voice notes taken or photos or videos on your own personal devices, please. We'll just keep that all for the central camera. Smartphone Free Childhood, by the way, is a voluntary thing. I don't work for them, nobody here works for them, it's a voluntary thing. But let me just offer a quick background sketch in case you didn't know. It started in February 24, which actually isn't very long ago. And a couple of parents felt conflicted about whether to give their child a phone. So they just put a post on Instagram, ironically. It quickly went viral, and the WhatsApp group began, and it spiraled. And when we did our first event, so January this year, it was a WhatsApp community of 200,000 people across every county in the UK. And I quickly updated my stats to discover that now it's 350,000 people. It's a huge WhatsApp community. So if you're part of it, brilliant. If you're not yet, you might want to join and just see what else is happening. And there are a lot of people pushing for change around smartphone usage. Interestingly, exactly the same time, concurrently, but not without information from each other, a book was published, maybe you've come across it, by a guy, a social psychologist called Jonathan Haidt. And he released a book called The Anxious Generation. And it has attracted a huge readership. By the way, if you want a sort of next step from this evening, I'd absolutely point you to that, or his Substack called After Babel, if you like Substack. He describes the move that has happened in this last sort of 10, 15 years, that we may have seen, a move away from a play-based childhood. That's what we had. Our childhood was based on playing and interacting with each other and climbing up trees and falling off climbing frames and lots of outdoor stuff with our friends, kicking footballs in the street, you know, all that kind of stuff. But he explains the many ways in which this has been shifted to a phone-based childhood and some of the detrimental aspects of that. And lots of that's going to be unpacked this evening. Oh gosh, sorry, I've skipped some slides. I'm going to be told off. Oh no, we're okay. So there we go. This is a little quick. There's loads of things I could have pulled out from this book. It's brilliant. It's a really, really good one. But I like this one. The first generation history, to go through puberty with a portal in their pocket that calls them away from people nearby into an alternative universe. You know, that sense of them being present anywhere but here. And that has become really normal for our young people. And we would love to shift that back so that when you're in the room, when we're in the room with each other, we're really there. Great that we can contact with people who are further afield, but this maybe would be a really good nudge for us back. And the other thing I like is this sort of ironic situation where we call it social media, but actually the loneliness stats are sky high, aren't they? And we know that as adults, we read about it in the press, and we see it in our children and our children's friends. And it's something that we need to take note of and think, is there something we can do about this? And we just wonder whether the smartphone thing is part of that. I'm going to play this in a second. Oh, I was hoping it wasn't going to play just yet. Because, you know, it's not just parents and teachers who are making social commentary on phone usage nowadays. It is also young people. It's the older teens and the young 20s who are saying things like this young lady who's recorded it. She wrote a little poem and she put it up online. And I like it because she's only 21 and she grew up, if you like, her teenage years on a phone. And this is what she came up with. And I'm going to leave you with this just in a second. I'm going to pass over actually to Ellie, Dr. Ellie Mason, who's going to take the floor in a minute. She's an excellent GP in West Sussex, maybe you know her, and she's got some brilliant things to share with us about children and the health situation that she sees. But let me just leave you with this, because I think she speaks for lots of our young people.
I think our parents were right, it was the damn phones. We laughed when we were children, hearing it's that Snapgram and InstaChat and Face Talk. They didn't understand, they couldn't even say it right. We thought we knew better than them. They didn't know what it was like having a world at the tip of our fingertips. We scroll through the trash so much we have headlines tattooed on our skin, wires for veins, AI for a brain, and they may not have understood, but they were right. It is the damn phones. A drug in my pocket, dependent on stimulation, but can we blame us? We were but children when they were given. We didn't know how to stop it. If I added up all the hours I spent on a screen, existential dread and regret would creep in, so I ignored this fact by typing away. And it's not like I can throw away my phone. It's how we communicate, it's how we relate, it's the medicine that is surely making our souls die. I used to say I was born in the wrong generation, but I was mistaken, for do I not do everything I say I hate? When I look in the mirror, I see a ghost staring back. I try not to think too much about who I would be without technology. The character behind my phone screen has become self-aware, almost worse than being naive, for I know it's poison, but I drink anyways. We used to be scared of robots gaining consciousness, a lie by the media companies to distract us, as to not ourselves become conscious of the mess they created. We are the robots, we are the product, so I sit and I scroll and I rot and repeat. Sit and scroll and rot until my own thoughts are what is being fed to me on TV, until my own feelings are wrapped up in celebrities, until my body is a tool of my political identity, and so I sit and I scroll and I rot. And so I post on the internet how the internet has failed us so that I may not fail my internet presence. I think our parents were right. It was the damn phones.
Hi everyone. I'm Dr. Ellie Mason. I'm a GP in Billingshurst in West Sussex, and I've done a couple of these talks recently, and I'm really pleased to be invited back today to talk to you all. Thank you for spending your evening as a parent. I know they're very precious, and Yeah, so thank you for coming. I have a special interest in mental health and children. I have two children of my own, a 2-year-old who has shared with me a cough by coughing directly into my mouth at regular intervals. So I'm really, really sorry if I cough throughout this presentation. But you can thank her. I also have a 7-year-old, and so this issue came to me about 2 years ago, thinking there's something going on here, and so I started looking at the research, and I want to share all of that with you this evening. So, some statistics for you. My presentation, I'm not going to lie, is quite statistics heavy, so sorry about that, but I think it's really, really important that we get an idea of how much this is impacting our children on a national basis, and also some smaller statistics on what I see in my surgery. So, we know that mental health is the largest public health issue facing our children today, which is a massive, massive thing. This was not the case 10, 20 years ago. We know that 2 years ago, 1 in 5 children, so 20% of all children, had a probable mental health disorder, which again, that's a massive amount of children. And 1 in 9 of those children actually was diagnosed, so went to their GP or was seen by a mental health professional and was diagnosed with a mental health condition. This graph, I always put up, and no one ever really knows what it means, so I'm going to explain now. But basically, this, I think, tells us that the main rise in mental health issues came before the pandemic. So lots and lots of people who don't agree with me on smartphone usage, and young people, like to say to me, including GP colleagues of mine and medical colleagues, they say, yeah, but it's the pandemic, isn't it? It's the pandemic which caused all of this anxiety and depression. And I agree, a big proportion of the mental health issues that children are now facing was contributed to by the pandemic and the social isolation that a lot of us faced. That being said, this graph basically shows us that actually the main rise in all of these mental health issues came between 2017 and 2020. So actually, this marries up with when smartphone usage really, really rose in children from the ages of 11. So I think that this actually proves that it wasn't the pandemic which has caused these issues. As I say, obviously it's been a contributing factor, but it's not the main cause. We also know that prevalence of mental health issues has increased by nearly 80% over the last 25 years, which is just horrendous in my view. So what do we see as GPs in children presenting? So a lot of our patients, in fact, the most common presentation is anxiety, and not just feeling a little bit anxious, about going to school. These are children who can no longer attend school. So we see a lot of parents coming, sometimes by themselves, saying, "Doctor, I don't know what to do with my child. They won't go to school. They're having debilitating panic attacks, anxiety so severe that they don't know how to cope with it, and that's stopping them attending school, extracurricular activities. It's affecting their whole quality of life. Obviously, low mood, depression, again, school refusal because of being unable to get out of bed. And this is 11 and 12-year-olds who cannot leave their bed because they are so depressed. Eating disorders, another big presentation that we see. Obviously, we know with social media, with smartphone usage, there's a lot of social comparison, which it's been really, really interesting, I think, over the last kind of couple of years. I was born in 1986, and there's a lot of people of my generation who felt that we were really, really shortchanged by the media, and body image, and people saying women were fat who clearly weren't, and we had to deal with that. That being said, I do believe that actually social media and body image even now is worse than that. All of the time, whenever I ask children who come to see me in my surgery about their body image, about how they feel about themselves, not one of them has said, I feel good in my skin. I feel, So it's a massive issue. Self-harm and suicidal ideation, and this is something, again, you think, oh, these kids are probably not having suicidal thoughts. That's pretty bad. You have to be pretty bad to get to that point. But most of them are. And these are including 10, sometimes even 9-year-olds thinking about killing themselves, not wanting to be alive anymore because they feel so dreadful. Some of the cases I've had with their self-harm, cutting into the skin is a very common one. Sometimes cutting various words like "I want to die," various phrases. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the apps, but things like TikTok, and TikTok is my least favourite app. I'll talk a little bit more about that and why. But so they can become obsessed with the idea of self-harm and of committing suicide. So TikTok, for example, actually, I'll just talk about TikTok now. I really hate it. Lots of people think it's quite benign. You can do your fun little dances. However, as health professionals, we get quite a lot of sort of updates from, I don't know who from actually. I get updates about TikTok challenges that might be putting children at risk. And one that I wanted to tell you all about, which is going on, I think, quite heavily in Suffolk at the moment, is something called the Tap Out Challenge, where children are encouraged to hold each other in a chokehold, and they have to tap on the other person's arm until before they pass out. Obviously, to a child, that probably sounds like great fun, I presume. But obviously, they have no idea of the risk that they're putting themselves at, the risk of asphyxiation, the risk of brain damage and death is really quite high. And we know that, from these challenges, children have died, yes, in the US, but also in this country. And it can happen to your child because they don't understand, they don't have the brain development to understand the risks of these challenges. The reason why I particularly brought up TikTok with that one is one of my patients about a year ago told me about how she had learnt about self-harm. She'd never really considered it before, but felt so low and wanted some support from mental health experts on TikTok, who encouraged her to get the piece of a pencil sharpener to use as a blade and to cut into their skin. So that's the kind of stuff that your children are accessing as mental health support, sadly. And then just obviously making plans for suicide. There's just all of this stuff out there on TikTok, on Instagram. If they have access to this and they feel suicidal, it can happen. Why do I think there's a link? I mean, I've talked a little bit about that, but I mentioned the main rise in the prevalence of these mental health issues did concur with prior to the pandemic. The relationship between, obviously, all of these mental health issues is really, really complex, but we know we have good evidence that these issues of social comparison, particularly, we talked about that with eating disorders, increased sedentary behaviour, so reduced physical activity. So we're not just talking about mental health here, but physical health. Smartphones do not help that. I also very briefly wanted to mention something called screen apnea, which is a new term to me. And I was like, have they just written the word screen instead of sleep? But no, it's actually now a sort of a term that we are finding where people, but children also are forgetting to breathe normally when they're scrolling on their screens. They blink less. All these things are, massively impacting their physical health. Just from scrolling on their screens. Impaired sleep. If your child has a mobile phone at bedtime, they're not going to be going off to sleep. They're going to be looking at their phone because it's addictive. We also know that children self-report worse mental health and outcomes by depending on how much social media and screen and smartphones they report using. It's also worse the earlier a child has a phone. And the reason for that is because of neural development. So the brain up to the age of 16 and beyond is obviously developing, but these children beyond, younger than 14 to 16 really aren't equipped to deal with the online content that they have access to. Just a very brief point on moderation. This is another argument that I have with people about this idea of moderation, because we love to think about moderation in terms of everything that we do, things, entertainment, things that we enjoy, food, alcohol. I don't think it works with smartphones, personally. And actually, we spoke with some of the children, some of the students here at Shoreham Academy who do think restriction and moderation can work. But the reason that I don't is because we'll hear from Carla a little bit later, but once a child has witnessed that harmful content, so whether it's that aggressive pornography or, I'm sorry to say this, but this is something that a child that I saw a few weeks ago told me. She's 11 years old, and she witnessed a baby's head being stamped on. This is happening, and in our county, and that's not abnormal for children to see this stuff. So once you've seen that, you can't take that back, and that 11-year-old child is now traumatised, and will have to live with that for the rest of her life. So that's why moderation doesn't work, because if her best friend has a phone and is showing her, that's done. So smartphones are addictive. We know this. There is a great book by Susie Davies, who's a GP, called The Healthy Selfie. I really, really encourage you to read it. She talks about the dopamine pathway, the dopamine reward pathway, and why smartphones are completely designed to be addictive, and more so even in children. We know that 1 in 3 young people are exhibiting problematic smartphone use, so they're addicted to their phones. Just a few stats here. So they spend an average of 3 hours and 20 minutes on electronic devices. This does include iPads, everything like that. But we also know that excessive screen time use like this is absolutely linked to lower educational attainment. I've got a whole list of the issues: poor sleep, worse speech and language, emotional dysregulation, poor cognition, and obviously issues with mental health, and worsening ADHD symptoms if they have ADHD. The average child receives 237 notifications per day. That's absolutely nuts. I can't cope with that. I'm arguing with everyone all the time. Another argument that I have with some of my colleagues is, what's so different between an iPad or a laptop and a smartphone? It's very, very different. I think it's obvious, but apparently it's not. The difference is you're not going to be watching your weird porn video at family dinner while your little sister's watching Bluey. Like that's just not what the average person would do. But they are going to do this if they have access to their smartphones at bedtime, because that's when that's private time. We also know this, problematic smartphone use is linked to a 20% increase in both anxiety and depression, the most common mental health issues. And there is this linear relationship, so it completely correlates between how much time they spend on social media and how likely they are to have these issues. So a little bit of my own research here. I'm just going to turn around a bit. In the last 18 months, about 55% of children seen by me in the last 18 months have raised some kind of mental health problem, which is, not volunteered by me. That's them either coming for that problem or talking about it when they're there. Lots of parents dealing with school refusal, as I mentioned. Every single child that I asked about having a phone and whether it affected their mental health, they all said yes. They all agree it has a negative impact on their mental health. I've mentioned, I also have to, as a GP, ask about whether they've thought about self-harm and suicide, and pretty much most of them say yes, they have. They're quite honest. I've talked about a few of the examples. But it's just incredibly sad that we have, cases of suicide in this area from issues with online content and, explicit photos being sent around. This is why it's such a massive public health issue. This is causing children's death, and we need to take it really, really seriously. And it's usually come about by they saw something online, a friend suggested it to them from a video, probably TikTok. Bloody TikTok. Very briefly, mental health referrals. I don't know if any of you have children who have needed to be referred to CAMHS. The waiting list is ridiculous. I mean, there's almost no point, actually. It's like 3 to 4 years. If you need a neurodiversity assessment, you might as well just not bother, because the funding has reduced significantly. And you can see on here the referral rates. I mean, they're already seeing many, many more children. So their child contact with mental health services, so these are the children that they are seeing, is up by 477% in the last 8 years. So there were 96,000 children who were seen 8 years ago, and now it's nearly 500,000. So it's massive. And yet, waiting lists are still 2, 3, 4 years long. So there's many, many, many more children who need their support. These children are often at rock bottom by the time they see me, and I say, right, there's literally nothing I can do. I can't prescribe you an antidepressant because I'm not allowed to. GPs aren't really allowed to prescribe antidepressants to under 18s. So if you want an antidepressant, you have to be seen by CAMHS, and that's not going to happen. So what do children do? They self-harm. They kill themselves. This is the reality. And most of them are not attending school, which is just affecting their whole future and all of their potential. So what can we do to help? This is my last slide, and I know some of you are teachers, some of you are parents, and these are just a few ideas. Obviously, ideally, don't get a smartphone until your child is 14, ideally 16. Research is showing that's a better age neurodevelopmentally to cope with smartphones. Spread the word. I'm so pleased to see so many of you here. Tell your friends, tell other parents what's been going on. Tell them what we've learned tonight. Work on cutting down screen time, and this includes teachers. My 7-year-old is getting a lot of screen time from having to do homework on, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but it still the whole of screen time actually does impact their educational attainment levels in a negative way, whether it's homework or whether they are watching porn. So it's just to keep in mind that actually screen time on the whole is a negative thing. I've put it there. Encourage not using it for homework if possible. The one idea that I did mention earlier today was about, that I suggest to a lot of families, is having a box when you come in the front door, and everyone has to put their mobile phones in there if you've already got a mobile phone for your child, and you do it as well, and you have at least an hour of phone-free time, or ideally the whole evening, and you have family time, you have homework time, and you don't actually access the phone. That's a nice idea that works for a lot of families. And then talk to your children as well. Talk to them about, I know it's awkward saying, I know it's awkward talking about the porn that they might have seen, but it's important that we have these open conversations, because they're not going to talk to anyone else about it apart from their friends, which might not be that helpful. So it's really, really important that you talk to them and open up, because that's, if they have seen something awful, then they're going to need your support, and that's the first step in kind of making things better. Very, very lastly, the NSPCC have a bit of an issue with our smartphone-free childhood movement, because there are certain vulnerable children who do need access to a phone. Our kind of comeback from that is absolutely, we're not wanting any vulnerable children to be at risk, but there are there are dumb phones, there are brick phones. We don't have to have internet access in order to protect vulnerable children. And that's me done.
So brave, isn't she? It's not easy. Well done, Carla. Great. It's also nice to see a lot of the naked truth stuff just coming through there. I'm like, oh yeah, good point. Oh yeah. I've mentioned that I work for a charity called the Naked Truth Project, and our strapline, if you like, is we open eyes and free lives from the damaging impacts of pornography. And we do that in two ways. We have two wings. One is education, one is recovery. I think I'm going to take this out. I can roam. We have a whole recovery wing, which means we have counsellors and therapists who help those who have discovered a bit of a compulsive behaviour around porn addiction. They're over 18. Because it's much harder to work with young people. Although when we're in schools, and that's the education side of it, we do often have people who come to us and say, well, can you kind of help then? Because we've got a bit of an issue going on. So I work in the education side because I'm a teacher, and we basically try to teach our young people at school age from sort of year 7 up to year 13, because we don't want them on the recovery. We don't want them to fill up our waiting list. We've got plenty of waiting lists already, thanks very much. And we would rather try to educate our young people earlier on so that they are a bit more critical with their online feeds. They're a little bit more aware of what the damaging things are for them. So that's what we do. We try to teach about the damaging impacts of pornography and try to help them make some different decisions about what they're going to click on. This is the question that we ask them. That's the title of our session for mainly for year 9s and upwards. But actually, especially as Syntac was speaking, it was reminding me that in our year 7 session, we talk about selfies and sending nudes and what that is and how that's happened. And then in our year 9 session, which is called #NoFilter, we talk about the different apps. We talk about TikTok. We talk about the good sides of it, if there are any, of TikTok, but we get them to identify the different apps they like. But also we talk really specifically about privacy settings. And from what Luke and Syntac have shared with us this evening, that feels even more vital. And that just reminded me to encourage you, when you have your conversations with your children, maybe they already do have phones, or when they do start to get phones, right from the beginning, as early as you can, encourage them about privacy settings. Encourage them, go in with them, work it out yourself with them. Where do you find the privacy settings? How can you put them at the very top? The only people that they're going to like and follow them are people they know, for example. So to start with, they'll be all excited about their snap streak and we've got to get all these thousands of people doing this and this streak and that streak, and it doesn't really matter who they are. It does matter who they are. It really matters who sees their posts. It really matters what they upload. And it really matters because once it's out of their hands, once it's gone on to online, they cannot get it back again. And if we can educate our young children with that kind of thought as well, parents and in schools, and the whole thing's joining together, then we've got a better chance of winning this thing. So definitely talk to your children so much, especially ahead of getting their devices. But this is what we ask our year 9s and 10s. And we ask it in 3 questions, actually. And we take our young people on a bit of a journey. And we say to them, is it good for you? What's actually in this thing and how was it made? And all the time we're asking them this question, well, what's the big deal? Because some of them are sitting there like, oh my goodness, there's another PSHE lesson. It's like, drugs one week, it's, I don't know, bullying the next week, and now it's porn, and others are like, oh, this is interesting. Never had this before. So there's a whole range. But we talk about the effects it has on our brains, the effects it has on our bodies, and the effects that it has on the way we see other people, and on the big question of justice, really, in our world. And we talk about human trafficking, we talk about modern-day slavery, and the links between the pornography industry and those things. And we ask them, do you want to be part of that? Is that what you want to be part of? Because when you click, by the way, that is what you're being part of. You think it's just a bit of cheeky fun. It's not quite that. We do also, as I've mentioned, we run these workshops, PG workshops. They're free, they're online, they're every term, because we know that parents are super scared. They're either super scared or totally in denial about what their children are seeing online. And we just encourage the conversation, really, which is exactly what Ellie has said to us this evening as well. And as I said, how I met Carla, just let's chat with our children about this stuff, because otherwise it feels really secret. They've got this whole private thing going on between them and their phone. We don't know what's in it. Well, let's open it up then. Let's have the conversation. Let's have them even in a public space in home when they're on their phones. Let's have them on the lounge, on the sofa, or in the kitchen, where we're close by, where we can chat to them about things. Because this is a statistic that I came across. I don't say that to shame us parents, but it does just highlight that sometimes we really don't know what our kids are looking at. And this came home to me when I was running a workshop a year ago or so, and there was a particular parent who arrived early, and she sat there and she got her notebook out before everybody else had even come in. And I sort of clocked her, and then other people came in, and we did the workshop. And then at the end, she sort of hovered, and there were people who wanted to ask questions that were a bit more private, so they were sort of queuing up, and I spotted this lady who was just kind of kept shuffling to the end of the queue again. She didn't want to be at the front. So I thought, oh, she's got something she wants to ask, but she doesn't want to be overheard. Anyway, so she finally gets to the front of the queue, and she was the last one in the room, and everyone had gone. And she said, my daughter's 12. And I discovered 2 years ago that she had been uploading content to OnlyFans, which is a website of adult video material, let's say, where you can interact on a one-to-one with somebody who would buy your content. Now, this is a website that apparently you can earn lots of money on, so lots of people are thinking, this is a great way of earning money. She was 10. And the mother stood there, and she just, she kind of broke. She wasn't really asking me anything. She just kind of wanted to get it out of her system, because she couldn't believe that upstairs in her bedroom, like few meters away from her, was her little girl who had found her way online to this website, and she was uploading video content of herself for who knows who was paying for that. So anyway, horrible, horrible things are happening, which is why these conversations are really important. So it's never going to happen to your kiddies. What is going on in this world? Let me just show you a few thoughts on it. So when we ask what's the big deal, it's pretty obvious. It's incredibly accessible. Carla mentioned the earliest ages of exposure to pornography, 9, 10. It's because it's been so accessible. And some of you may think, yeah, but surely 25th of July, 2025, we had the Online Safety Act. That made everything different, and it's going to protect our children forever. Yeah, well, it's going to help for sure, because you do now need to verify your age when you go onto some sort of pornography website, if you do, but if you've got an Instagram account or something else, it's slightly different. So it's still very, very easy for children to find material. But at least now, with the Act of July this year, it's going to help protect the accidental exposure, because that is actually where most of the young children, they're not going out searching for it. It's just accidental. It's a 3 clicks away from a Peppa Pig video on YouTube, if there's no parental controls in place. So it's really, really accessible. It's also anonymous. It's not like the old days if somebody wanted to go into a Blockbuster movie store and you have to go and show I say this to the kids in school, like you have to show your ID. You've got to look at someone at the counter while you take the big VHS video out. You rent it for a week. I can see people smiling there, like, you remember that. So there we were, presenting your ID to prove that you're 18, and someone looks at you in the eye and then you take it away and you come back a week later and you give it back again. There's none of that anymore. It's just like, it's in your pocket, you're on the bus. Nobody can see. Totally anonymous. Really easy. Nice and secret. Yeah. So there are a couple of reasons why it's become a bit of a big deal. It's different. It's not like pornography's never been around. It's been around since the beginning of time. It's just really different now that it's online. So here's a couple of stats. And the last one I'm going to pick up on in a minute as well. There's an amazing organisation called Dignify. They do a report every year about exposure to online sexual harms. And this was their 2024, so just last year. And the one I just want to point out to you is the 29% here, the fourth one down. 29% of repeat porn users have acted out porn. So what that means is our teenagers who've been looking at things for a couple of years, it's not many steps when they start to date somebody for them to think, oh, this is what you do now. Oh, I see. So that's the next step then in my relationship. So we start dating for a while being like, I don't know, 6 minutes or something. And then suddenly they have to try these things out. So I was on an online call with somebody in Australia where they're talking quite a lot about this as well. And it turns out that in Brisbane, they opened their first strangulation clinic. because there were so many people who were presenting at the doctor with strangulation marks because they thought that was what the next step in their sexual relationship was. That so normalised was it, that choking, strangling, these horrible things, our young people are starting to think that's normal. It's not just like a little kiss behind the bike sheds. You know, they're moving very quickly to very violent, and that is a problem. So it's accessible, it's anonymous, it's addictive. There's a dopamine release. I'm sure a scientist in the room could do it much better than me, but there's a whole load of things happening in the brain when you release dopamine once, and then you go back for more, and you go back for more, and you go back for more. And you know, the thing that worked the first time doesn't really quite give you the same kick the next time, so you go for something a bit more edgy, and then very, very quickly that can escalate in the pornography world. I'm not going to ask you this. Do not worry. But I do ask our year 10s and upwards, because often when we do our sessions in school, they do have a device with them, controlled carefully, and we ask them this. Do you know they're so keen to vote? And what happens is we have this live data. I don't know if you guys know Menti, this platform that we use. So we give them 5 options. When was the last time you viewed porn? And I wonder if you, I'm not going to ask you, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you your own habits, but I'm not going to ask you what you would guess because I've got a slide to show you. But the first people who vote are this side. They're like, yeah, this morning, before I came to school, you know, and they shoot the bar graph up. And there's a whole bunch over here who are like, I've never seen anything. And that bar graph kind of creeps up fairly quickly. And then there's a whole bunch of people in the room who are like, I can't really remember, maybe a week ago, maybe a month ago, not really sure. And so you end up with a graph like this. Year 9. They're 14. So when I say addictive, I mean, I would take a guess at that 56%. That's quite regular usage, isn't it? I would say that's moving towards addiction. Maybe it's compulsion. I don't want to give it a scientific addiction term, but I think that lends itself towards a behaviour that is becoming very habitual and possibly problematic. And the 29% there, I have to be careful with them because I want to really say, well done, you're not missing anything, and I don't want to pique their interest in thinking, what am I missing anything? Like, yeah. So this is a 2023 stats. It's likely to be a little bit higher now in 2025. It's not just boys, by the way. It's definitely not a male issue. This is everyone that we need to talk to. Our girls, we need to talk to our boys about this. It's regular. So it's accessible, anonymous, it's addictive, and this is the worrying bit, because if you're sitting there thinking, but if it's like page 3 of The Sun, and like it's just a few boobs, like, is that really a problem? Does it really matter? I mean, it's, sex, that's part of life, that's fine. Yeah, sure. However, it's aggressive. It's not nice kind of stuff. This was a report, Miriam Cates, she was an MP, she did this almost a couple of years old now, this report. 1.4 million children access pornography, violent, degrading and abusive. Those would be the descriptions of the kind of sexual stuff that our young people could be exposed to if we're not careful. We're not talking about tender, committed. We're not talking about love or preferring each other or loving well or being careful or holding hands. Those kind of moments, intimate. That's not the description. Even if I use those adjectives with our young people, the young people are like, oh, what's she talking about? They've got no idea. They don't use those words to describe sex. And I worry for a generation of young people who grow up thinking that those words don't belong where they should be. They're beautiful words, and that's what I'm sure many of us would agree that that's the kind of thing we would like our young people to aspire to, not the violence, the abusive, the degrading thing that they are thinking is normal behaviour. Nasty slide, sorry, should have given you a bit of a warning. Slapping, strangulation, spitting, gagging. Like, so many people are describing that this is just their normal behaviour of sexual experiences. So that's what we do. That's why we do what we do. Because we want them to know that is not the best for them. That we would like to challenge this online world that is targeting, I'm afraid, 11-year-old boys. That's in their sight. How can we get them on board? And then how can we, do the whole trafficking thing is aimed at our young teenage girls. How can we woo them? We're going to tell them they could be models to start with. Just send us a photo. We'd love to see. We've seen your TikTok. That's how it starts, often. We've seen your TikTok. We love your TikTok. Brilliant. You'd look great in this. Do you want to come do some modelling for us? That's how it starts. starts. Yeah, I could earn 100 quid. Yeah, 100 quid. Okay, I could do that for 100 quid. And it starts like that. And then suddenly they're not just modelling photos of like a nice hair product or mascara. It's like, do you want to take your top, and then it just goes down a rabbit hole. And before you know it, there's a whole load of pornography going on. And it's all secret. I'm not going to tell anybody about it. It's a world that we need to do something about, which is why we're all here. And we're going to make a bit of a change, because if we can protect our young people from things like this, it's a really, really good thing. It's a really, really good thing that we're all here in this conversation together. So, enough of that? That's probably enough, isn't it? I'm going to hand over very willingly to David Smith, who is a headmaster of a boys' school up in London, and they've made some good decisions about their phone usage. David, why don't you come and tell us how it's going and what it's been like? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for having me. I'm probably the only person here not from Sussex. So I drove down from London today. I lead an all-boys secondary school in Fulham, so in West London. It's a free school, so we've been there for 11 years, and I've been there for 8 of those 11 years. So I just want to tell you about what we do and why we have done it. So, let's get this working. Okay, also look how much weight I've lost from this picture over there. It's amazing. So I'm very proud of that. So in September 24, the Fulham Boys School was plastered across the media because of our clear stance on phones. And it had a ripple effect. We were absolutely everywhere. People contacting me, people speaking to me outside the school gates, parents coming to get into contact. What are we doing and why are we doing it? And our stance was really clear that our students, our boys, because we're an all-boys school, from years 7 to 11, so that's 11 to 16-year-olds, should not have a smartphone. So that means they were banned from sight. It means you couldn't come to school with a smartphone. You couldn't go home from school with a smartphone. You couldn't sit on a bus with a smartphone, on a tube with a smartphone. Couldn't go on a school trip with a smartphone. We identified 3 brick phones, so burner phones. People thought they'd be seen as drug dealers. They're not. They're kids from Fulham. And we said, you've got to choose one of those 3 phones. If you do want to have one, it's not a necessity. If you feel you need to have one, you can have one. All those phones would allow you to text or call, nothing else. And we would sanction students if they brought a phone in with them. So if they had a phone, we would confiscate it for 6 school weeks. And that doesn't include school holidays. So just to give an example of that, I confiscated a phone on the 2nd of July last year. That student got his phone back on the 1st of October. I think that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So why have we done these things? So we've done these things with a really strong policy. I know this is a strong policy, but as a headmaster, I had to decide to stick my neck on the line a little bit and decide what I thought was the best thing to do and why I thought those things were good. I looked at yonder pouches. I know there's a yonder pouch out there on the table. Looked at the advantages, the disadvantages about whether students should have a phone, whether they should be switched off in their bags. But I thought it was a moral duty to do something for our boys. There's something actually, it's not just about bringing a phone to school, having it in a pouch. There's something about a phone. We needed to do something. That the next generation is being ruined by social media and being ruined by smartphone use, and that someone had to do something about it, which is why we went for that stance of getting rid of phones altogether. I think it's really important to say this isn't because we needed to do it as a school. We're a very, very successful school. So we sit in the top 2% nationally, academically. We're really proud of that. I always say to parents, don't choose to go to St Paul's Boys' School or Eton School. These schools that cost you 40 grand a year. Come to us, we'll do it for free. Okay? It's really, really important. It's a very, very good school. There's a fall in roll in Hammersmith and Fulham, but we had over 600 apply for 130 places. People are desperate to get in. Our behaviour and standards are excellent. And this is all while students had phones on them. So our policy previously had to be switched off in your bag. I know that people might sneakily use them in the toilets, did whatever they wanted to do, but you'd never have seen a phone. If you'd walked around the school, you'd never have seen a phone in the playground, in the classrooms. They wouldn't have got it out because we would have taken it off them anyway. They would have got it back at the end of the day. We were thriving. We still are thriving. So in theory, we didn't need to make any changes whatsoever. But at the same time, I realised that we did need to make a change. But the change isn't about academic attainment. It's not about behaviour being better in school. And I know in schools, if you do ban smartphones, those things will get better. I know that, but for me, the reason getting rid of phones isn't because of academic attainment. It isn't because of there being really good behaviour in schools. There are better reasons for why phones shouldn't be there. Young people desperately need a life without smartphones. To remove them at school, but allow them to have it outside of school, or let that be part of the narrative, I don't think is good enough. I think if you're happy for a child to have a smartphone outside of school, you should be happy for them to have it inside of school, and head teachers have to care about what happens outside as well as inside the building. We care about the whole person, and therefore we're very much aware that something needs to be done. So I believe the problem is really clear to see. We've heard loads of problems today. I don't think any of those things should massively surprise us. I asked my senior leadership team all to read The Anxious Generation, which has been mentioned today. And it was really shocking looking at the research. But actually, as a teacher, when you read the research and you see what happened in school, it shouldn't really be shocking because we're hearing these things all the time anyway. As a head teacher of an all-boys school, I read The Boy Crisis over a year ago. Those statistics are terrifying. The worst statistic for being disadvantaged in the world is being a boy. Is being a boy. If you're a poor boy, even worse. A poor black boy, even worse than that. But the worst stat is just being a boy. But it's not about boys versus girls. We don't get it right with the boys, we won't get it right with the girls. The girls need the boys need the girls. We need to do something about it. So we conducted a series of briefings with our staff to start off with. So our staff meet every single day from 8:15 to 8:25, and we did 6 weeks of briefings on a Friday looking at phone addiction, and it was on staff phone addiction. The result of that is all staff, including myself, would say that they are addicted to phones, many of which have come out of that wanting support about what they are looking at on their phones because they realise that they had a problem. So I thought, I'm onto a winner here. My staff know that they have a problem, so surely they understand that the students have a problem as well. We conducted a survey for all 800 boys. It was anonymous. 56 reported getting their first phone in year 5 or year 6. That's 10 or 11 years old. 93% had a smartphone in school. 89% bring their phone. 89% bring their smartphone into the school. 49% admit to using it in school. That one really annoyed me, and I wanted to kill them, but it was anonymous, so I couldn't do anything about it. 42% said they get 50 messages a day, but 11% over 200 notifications. 43% report their parents have their phone password. That was a really good one. But 26% have to give their phone in at night, which means 3/4 of our boys have a smartphone and they just get to keep it. And 38% had unrestricted access. They could do what they want when they wanted. And that was after years of education. So a lot of people always say to me, why don't we just educate people? Like, you're a teacher, you're a head teacher, just educate. We educate parents to death, they don't listen. It's really hard to get parents to listen. It's really hard for them to understand and get them to come in and talk about these things. Actually, sometimes it's hard for you to get your children to listen. You just tell them, I'm sorry, you might not understand it, this is the right thing to do. As a head teacher, I just thought, actually, we're not really going to engage. Other than that, we're just going to tell you this is what we're going to do. I also spoke to lots of boys. I spoke to a year 10 student, so he was 14 or 15. I asked him, when's the first time you watched pornography? He said, on a residential school trip with the Fulham Boys School when he was in year 7. That really got to me. I thought, wow, like, your parents have protected you, and on my watch, you have become addicted to pornography. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen ever again. We've got 25 boys in Peru at the moment as a school. None of them have a smartphone. It's brilliant. So no one's going to get addicted to porn in Peru. They might get other things, yeah, but that won't be an issue there. But these stats are all shocking, but also I think at the same point we need to realise, is it really shocking? When we've heard everything up here today, does it really surprise us? As a head teacher, it doesn't surprise me at all. I had to deal with eating disorders, drug use, drug trafficking, gang-related activities, self-harm, suicide attempts, acts of violence and aggression. Misogyny is prevalent in boys' education, pornography addiction and sexting. The list goes on. It happens for every single family, every single child, whether they're wealthy, whether they're poor, whether the parents are fantastic, whether the parents are not. It's just really, really obvious that it affects everyone. My daughter is in year 7, she was in year 6 last year, and she got 3 letters while being in year 6 from the head teacher urging parents to do something because there was bullying on social media. But she never gave advice to get rid of phones. she said, you just got to be aware of this, be aware of this, be aware of this. And I thought, why don't you just tell them you shouldn't let your child have a phone? I don't really understand why she didn't, but that meant a generation of girls are going into secondary school and they're worried about their bodies, their emotions, what they look like, their relationships, and it's being dictated to before they even get to that secondary school age, which is really, really scary. So, what have we seen? In some ways, on the surface, nothing as a school. Haven't seen anything. We're a really good school. We had very high standards. We still have high standards. The school continues to be something I'm immensely proud of. But underneath, the boys are just happier. The huge majority of year 7, parents chose not to buy them a smartphone. I'm very aware that older boys had one, and they therefore not bring them to school. They might have got the brick phone, but the lots of year 7s, they chose not to have a smartphone altogether. As a school, we've had a 90% reduction in sexual exploitation offences. Okay, so it's anything that's come to us to a sexual exploitation. That could be sexting, it could be form of harassment or bullying. That's a 90% reduction, which is absolutely amazing. My safeguarding lead is delighted. And our boys talk to each other more. They're in the community more. When they're going home, they're engaging one another more. They're sitting on the tube and the bus. We've had so many people in the local community talk to us and say, wow, your boys are amazing, because they are engaging with one another. That includes an 18-hour coach journey to Italy going skiing. They haven't got a phone with them. They survive without one. They do really, really well. As a head teacher, I'm judged on how many apply to the school. More apply to the school now than what they did before. Even though we were oversubscribed then, we're more oversubscribed now. We had an Ofsted trial inspection of their new framework last year. Ofsted were delighted with it. So all the benchmarks as a head teacher, it ticks every single box. It makes my CV better and it protects the young people as well, which is a really good combination. My view is it's about taking back control. And I think adults need to take back control. The children shouldn't be in control. We love our boys in the school, but we want to control the narrative. It's important that we talk about sex and we educate about sex before they're having sex. That's really important. I think everyone would agree with that. It's exactly the same with everything else, including the use of smartphones. We tell our boys at school to value their bodies, to value their emotions. We tell them about the dangers of the world. We talk to them openly about being boys, but also about being men. We talk about how they should treat girls and how men should treat women. We tell them they're going to be future husbands and they're going to be future dads. I think it's really good to talk and use that language. Not having a phone can be impractical. We talk that through. It's really impractical not having a phone, but it's not life-defining. It's really important. It's not life-defining, but choosing to have one can change everything. And once the door is opened, there is no going back. When I ask young men, the boys in the school, when they would buy their son or their daughter a smartphone, they never say 11. If I say, when did you get your phone? They say 12. Okay, when would you give your child a phone? It would always be after 12. Whatever age they received a phone, they'd always give their child a phone later on. Why? Because they've experienced it, they know the dangers of it, and they actually, often when I say, what about if you have a daughter, they often wouldn't want their daughters to have a phone because they know what boys can be like on their phones. Yeah, and they're the best people to talk to. In a recent exclusive in the Telegraph, one of our Year 11 students, this student in the middle, he was asked about our phone policy, and his answer was profound. I believe it speaks about everything we do at FBS. He said, when my friends at other schools heard about the ban, they thought they were lucky, but really I think we're the lucky ones. Actually, and I think you'll realise this as a parent, when you just stand your ground and you explain and you go through the why, but alongside that you just love them. And you tell them you love them. I tell boys I love them all the time at school. Just tell them I love them. If you do that and you have that narrative, they get it. They might not love it, but they get it because they know you're for them. And I think that's really, really important. This term alone, I've been to Westminster to hear politicians speak about the worries with smartphones. It's very, very topical. I've sat through sessions, as I'm sure all teachers have done, in inset days, which is statutory guidance on keeping children safe in education. We've had Prevent that have come in to talk about radicalisation and really realising how to best safeguard children. The answer is obvious. It's not easy, but it is really clear. Life is better, life is safer, and I would say full of more joy and wonder with a young generation without a smartphone. So I'd encourage you to keep going. I'd encourage you to to spread that narrative, talk to head teachers. They're doing a fantastic job. It's a really hard job being a head teacher with everything that gets thrown at us. But the more you do it, it does and will change lives. I'm sure there'll be some questions at the end, but thank you for having me.
So Dame Rachel D'Souza, she's the Children's Commissioner, and she's done lots of work with children, asking them, similarly questions that David's talked about and Olivia's talked about. When you ask young people on phones, what do they say? So she had a whole load of interviews that she did with people, and there's a short clip I'd love to show you. It's about a minute, and my CEO, Ian Henderson, who's on the video as well, he did a whole series of talks called the P-Word Talks. You can look at them you can find them on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. And they've done an amazing selection of interviews with different people. And Dame Rachel D'Souza is one of them. And let me I won't even say what she says because it's better in her own words.
So they were like, don't let us take our phones to bed at night. You know, it's such a sensible thing, but don't give us our phones too young. Let us be children. So this is words coming from young people, because what parents hear is, everyone's got one, give me a phone, but actually what the young people were playing back to me were, oh gosh, you know, I'm so relieved mine didn't give me one till whenever, or I got mine too young and saw terrible things. The other thing was, talk to us. It's like, talk to us regularly in an age-appropriate way about the things that we're seeing, and we need you. We need you to be the adults. We need you to protect us. And I really want parents to take that message. But what I will tell parents is, when I ask that large group of young people, when you're a parent yourself, would you give your child an internet-connected phone and apps, you know, before 16? The answer was absolutely not.
So there we have it. If you haven't yet, but you're thinking about joining this big WhatsApp community and signing up to the Parent Pack, you can now if you can get your phones out, you're allowed. We let you. Smartphone-free adulthood is over for a minute. And you can take a little picture of this QR code. Do talk about it. If you're parenting with somebody else, talk about it with your partner. Make a decision together. It's really important that you're on the same page if you do have another adult in the house that you're doing this very difficult job with. So yeah, take the QR code, have a look up at Smartphone-Free Childhood, and talk about it with your children as well. This is a quote from a book I read a couple of years ago, the late Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He says, we've undergone a kind of cultural climate change that's seen a move from we to I. And now it's time to go back to we. And I think by removing the smartphone thing, there is a chance, isn't there, that we can just help this generation of young people who are very individual, as we all have become these little islands with our phones, but to move a little bit more back to a we mentality where we do this thing together, just like tonight. Here we are together from all different types of walks of life and different thoughts and different families, but we're trying to work this thing out together. It's not something we can do on our own. We need each other. We want to talk about these things with our families, with our friends, so we can make decisions for the best for our children. I'm going to finish with a little story, and then we've got just a couple of minutes for Q&A. So if you've got a burning question, hold it, just for 1 minute. So imagine you're on the beach down at Shoreham or down at Brighton, and so there was a dad who was walking there with his son, walking along the beach. But now you've got to imagine it's more like a sand beach, like there's low tide and the water's out. And along the beach is a whole load of starfish, just all washed up. And the dad and the boy are walking along. And the boy's kind of trailing behind his dad, and his dad's kind of hurrying him. You know, the sun's setting, we need to get home, that kind of thing. And the boy stops, and he bends down, and he picks up a starfish, and he lobs it into the sea. And his dad's like, come on, hurry up, hurry up. And the boy stops again, and he bends down, and he picks up another one, and he lobs it into the sea. Like there's millions of starfish all washed up on the shore. And the dad sort of turns back and says, come on, like, what are you doing? It's not going to make any difference. There's so many of them. And the boy looked up at his dad. And he looked back at all the starfish. And he picked up another one. And he threw it into the sea. And he said, it made a difference to that one. And I love that little story because I think that's the difference that you will make in your family with your child. Except it won't just be your child, it'll be the ripple effect of their friends and their friends' friends and your friends and their family and your nieces and your nephews and everyone else. So when you make those kind of decisions that Olivia's made, that Carla's made, that other of your friends will have made, you will definitely be making a difference that makes a really huge impact on lots and lots of people. We have a few minutes left, but because we haven't wanted to race our speakers because they've all got such fabulous things to say, but we do have, I mean, actually a number of you have already put in a number of questions and answers. Rather than getting our panel to come and take moments to come and sit up here, is that all right, Naomi? Well, go on. Thank you. So if you couldn't hear Naomi said, full permission to absolutely leave. It's 8:30, that's what we advertised. But if you have got a burning question that you'd like and that you think is kind of quite appropriate to everybody really maybe thinking your question too, then do you want to put your hand up and I'll race up with a mic, or you can shout and I will try and do my best to try and translate the question. This is fun. I feel like I'm on a game show.
Just where can we find age-appropriate resources? Because my kids range from 10 down to 3, so it's different ages. I'm keen to start these conversations, but they need to be delicate.
Brilliant. So the question is, where do you find resources? So internetmatters.org was something that Carla put up. Smart Social is another really good website. Anybody else know immediately some really good things we can throw out?
Yeah, sorry. We've actually put a parent guide together, so things that I discussed tonight. It's written for parents by parents with heart and hindsight, things that we want to share with other people. There's things like there's porn on Spotify. I didn't know that until they were older. Pitfalls of Snapchat, Snap Maps, all that kind of stuff. So that's actually got launched today. So I'll send it to Lauren and Naomi. You can send it to all the ticketers. But there's resources in that. That was the point.
So if you got a ticket, you can get an email with that resource link on it. Yeah, thanks.
Can we get a copy of this video?
Oh, can we get a copy of the video? I don't know.
Once it's edited, and there were some bits that are not okay to be shared, like the police aren't allowed to share their stuff. But yeah, once it's all edited, we'll send it out to everyone. Maybe in a few weeks.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we can send it to you. Like, anyone we can send it out.
I don't know the thought about the language we're using again. I've got a young child. I don't want him to have a smartphone, but he's not keen already because we're using really negative language about brick and dumb phones. And I'm like, it's not selling it to him.
That's a really good point about how we can make language more positive about the non-smartphone. Anybody got a quick answer to that one? Panel? Anyone else? Huh?
A retro phone.
Yeah, like vintage.
Yeah, retro. Yeah.
Retro phone. But keeping it positive is really important. It's also the way we talk about our online world. We have to be positive about it because our children they're digital natives, aren't they? We're the nomads. That's what someone said to me once. We have to be positive about online, otherwise they don't listen to us about anything. So you're right, we do need to find positive language around that.
The wise phone. The wise phone.
The wise phone. Smarty phone. They need to come up with it. Yeah, do a brainstorm with your kids. That's a really good point. Our suggestions are going to be rubbish. The kids are going to come up with a better word. I like that. Oh, everyone's warming up now. You've all got questions. I'm going to get my steps in.
We've got government representation today. I'm just wondering what will be done in Parliament on behalf of us Sussex residents. What are you going to communicate?
Thank you. Tom, I'm going to hand that straight to you.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't plan any kind of formal speech because I thought we'd had ages for Q&A and I was going to kind of speak then. So let me just talk briefly about it. Firstly, thank you to all of our panellists. I think the bravery of Carla, the strength of Olivia in saying no about a phone. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm not a parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a child psychologist. I'm not a GP. I don't have that expertise. But I look at my own phone usage. I got an iPhone when I was 18. And it worries me, the amount of time scrolling. And it used to be fun on things like Twitter. Like I was getting the news. It was interesting. It was very addictive. And now it's just racist slop. And it's horrible. And I look at my own usage and I think, why am I doing this now? And I think a lot of people in this room, I imagine, are also thinking, you're here because you're concerned for your children. but you also see the behaviours of your own screen time and usage and how that translates to children. And I don't know if I'm going to have children, but I think this has been very eye-opening that if I did, they won't be getting a smartphone for a very long time. In terms of what the government is doing, so we have issued guidance to all schools about smartphones, saying we don't think that they belong in schools, that schools are for learning and not for likes. We haven't enforced a national ban. I think that would be quite difficult to enforce. And what's been really interesting to me is I've only been an MP for a year, but already the number of schools in our area that no longer allow smartphones in schools as a first step, that's been transformational. That's happened very, very quickly, and no doubt thanks to fantastic campaigning that's going on here. I think another reason, and I'm not here to shoot down reasons to do it, but I think trust in teachers and trust in parents is quite high. Trust in politicians is not, and I think it's important to actually build trust and support for something, and I think we really need people to want this for themselves and for their children. I've got a friend who has been going through alcoholism for many years, and they're 150 days clean or something recently, which is amazing. And I think when I was younger, I always thought, oh, if I had a friend who was going through this, I could stop it, I could make them better, and it took many, many years to realise I couldn't. And I think addiction is very similar in many ways, and we all have a role to play here. Other things we're doing, of course, are the age verification that came in July, and that was very controversial. I've got to say a lot of people my age have raised that with me, and not in a positive way. And so, your support for that kind of thing, I think, has been really helpful. I know there is more to do, and we're going to see what kind of effect it has, and I know there'll be further steps to take. But that's a really big change, introducing photo ID to access adult content, and also putting more responsibilities on websites to ensure that they are moderating the content that is available on there, or that if they do host adult content, and that's not just limited to pornography, but violence and other adult topics, that they have to ensure that the people who are accessing that content are 18 and have been verified as such. There's also a study that's been going on into the effects of smartphone and social media usage by children, and the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology is considering its findings and will publish the results in due course, and I hope that this will allow us to build on what's happened so far. But I think a lot has happened since last July, since we got in. I think we want to support parents to make good decisions. I know that everybody feels a bit powerless, and that's something you were talking about. It's really hard to say, you can't have a phone. And I think I'm not passing the buck here, but we really need parents we want to support you to do what you feel the right thing is, and try and build an atmosphere where you can do that, whether it's no phone. But if there is a phone, making sure those parental controls are on, making sure that you've got the privacy settings used too. One thing that was quite scary to me was when I got elected, they have some people who will look at your online presence and see what can be identified about you, because people sometimes target people in our jobs. Thankfully, mine was very clean, but just posting a picture from your window online could identify exactly where you live. And now that's worrying for people in this kind of job, but for children, posting that kind of thing, we were talking earlier about geolocation as well, making sure those settings are switched on, because they are increasingly available, and so please do that. I cannot read my handwriting. Oh, notifications. This applies for adults and children. You can turn them off for specific apps. So, if there are apps, if you do have a smartphone and you want your children to be able to get calls, text messages or whatever, but you can turn them off for social media so that they're not getting, the 200 plus notifications a day. I've got that on most of my apps. I don't need to get the Facebook notifications. I can choose when to log in. I've gone on for too long, but really, I think I've learned a lot tonight. I think it's something we're all learning about over time, and there's been some real improvements, both in terms of what government's doing, what schools are doing, what parents are doing, and this conversation very much isn't over, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops and what more government can do to help people. Sorry, I've spoken for ages, but hopefully that was interesting.
Tom, thank you so much. We have absolutely run out of time, and we do want to honour that. It's already hard enough for you to go. I can hear there are a few more questions. Do feel free to hover behind. The panel will stick around for a little while. I'm just checking that there isn't a really important slide. There are lots of questions you guys have already submitted. Back to the parent pact, says Naomi. Excellent. We'll do that, and we'll leave it there. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Keep the conversation going. We'll see you again.